I never imagined that a single business trip could unravel everything. My name is Bren and I'm 34 years old. Now, looking back, I see how fragile my seemingly perfect world was, how one careless decision could shatter years of trust and the carefully crafted life I had built. Mark and I had been married for 11 years, and from the outside we appeared to be the ideal suburban couple, 2 kids, a lovely well-maintained home, and a peaceful neighborhood. Mark worked for a company, and I managed our household, keeping up appearances so that no one could see the cracks beneath the surface. I've always been impulsive, but not in a dramatic way. It was more about those fleeting moments when I acted without thinking, like online shopping sprees, spontaneous girls' weekends, or in this case, attending a work meeting that was anything but professional. My 8-year-old son Ethan and my 5-year-old daughter Emma were completely unaware of the changes coming our way. They were my world, but somehow, in a moment of weakness or self-deception, I convinced myself that it was just excitement. I told Mark the meeting was in Chicago, but the truth was I was suffocated. I was tired of the daily routines of motherhood, tired of being a wife. I longed for something, anything, to make me feel like my old self, before the kids, before the endless laundry, lunches, and PTA meetings. It started innocently enough. I flirted with a man I met at the hotel bar, but things quickly escalated. I knew it was wrong. I knew exactly how wrong it was. But in that moment, I didn't care. When Mark found out about my affair, the weeks that followed were filled with tension, silent therapy sessions, and hushed conversations when the kids weren't around. He was methodical, gathering financial documents, consulting divorce lawyers, and planning his next steps. I didn't realize how vulnerable I was as a stay-at-home mom with no income of my own. Every penny came from Mark. Every credit card, every utility bill, every grocery purchase was in his name. I had spent so much time trying to maintain our picture-perfect life that I never thought about what would happen if it all fell apart. By then, Jack, the man from the hotel, had long since disappeared. The passionate moments we shared felt like a distant dream. He wasn't interested in messy divorces, kids, or complicated situations. A man like him thrived on excitement but wasn't willing to face the consequences. Mark, on the other hand, had always been a good provider, a reliable, stable investment banker. Although his long work hours kept him busy, he made sure we were well taken care of. Apart from his reliability, he didn't excite me. He didn't make my heart race. Jack, the photographer from the bar, was different. He was 39, and there was something about him that made me feel alive. With him, I wasn't just Mark's wife or the mom who always remembered to buy snacks. The first night I spent with Jack, I convinced myself it was just harmless drinks and conversation, but we both knew where it was headed. The chemistry between us was undeniable. That night, I made a choice that I knew would change everything. I didn't think Mark would find out. I was careful. I used disposable apps, created fake email accounts, and deleted our texts. But my actions must have raised suspicions. And then one day, everything came crashing down. I was mowing the lawn when Mark walked in. His expression was different, calm, but with a cold edge I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words never bode well in a marriage. He had tracked my phone, found out about the hotel, and knew about Jack. What he didn't know was that somehow he had screenshots, texts, proof of everything. My carefully constructed lies instantly shattered. He asked how long it had been going on, his voice disturbingly quiet. I couldn't even look at him. The kids were in the next room watching cartoons, completely unaware of the storm brewing in the living room. Mark had already started sleeping in the spare room. Ethan and Emma sensed something was wrong, but we pretended everything was fine. During family meals, the kids chattered away, completely oblivious to the earthquake shaking the foundation of our home. One morning, I found a stack of papers on the kitchen counter. Divorce papers. They were neatly organized, just like Mark. He had already spoken to a lawyer, planning how custody and assets would be divided. That was when the reality hit me. I had completely misjudged everything. My impulsiveness, my belief that I could have something exciting without facing the consequences. The most terrifying realization was that I was financially dependent on a man I had completely shattered the trust between us. My mother had always warned me not to take things for granted, to never put all my eggs in one basket. Those were her words. At the time, I had rolled my eyes, confident that I was in control, that everything was fine. Now those words echoed in my mind, a harsh reminder of my mistakes. Mark was already making his move. He had consulted with our financial advisor, freezing our joint accounts and methodically safeguarding his assets. I discovered, to my horror, that I had no personal credit history. For years, I had been a stay-at-home mom, financially invisible. The children were starting to sense my anxiety. Emma began drawing heartbreaking pictures of our family with me and Mark separated by vast empty spaces. Ethan became quieter, more withdrawn. I knew I had not only destroyed my marriage but also the foundation of our family. Jake, the man from Chicago, had long since faded into a distant memory. The affair now seemed like a foolish fantasy. He had no desire to complicate his life with a woman who had 2 children and a broken marriage. Men like him are skilled at creating excitement but incapable of dealing with real-life consequences. Mark handed me the divorce papers at breakfast in front of the children. His calmness was far more terrifying than any outburst of anger. He had already consulted the best divorce lawyer in town, and I was about to learn just how badly I had misjudged everything. "I want full custody," he said, his voice cold. "Your indiscretion changed everything." The word indiscretion made my affair sound like a minor social mistake, but we both knew it was much worse. My first meeting with Mark's lawyer was a rude awakening. I had no idea what I was walking into. I sat there feeling small and exposed as they discussed my entire life as if I were a liability. It quickly became painfully clear how little I knew about finances, investments, property ownership, or even the basic details of our joint accounts. Mark had managed everything while I had been content to live in a bubble of suburban luxury. One of the few blunt conversations Mark had with me was when he said, "You need to get a job." The words hung in the air like a challenge. I hadn't worked full-time in over 9 years, and my last professional experience had been as a part-time marketing assistant. The children hadn't been doing well before. We had Ethan. Emma would often burst into tears, asking why Daddy wasn't sleeping in the same room anymore. Ethan had begun to struggle in school, getting into fights, becoming more withdrawn. I knew it was my fault, but I couldn't bring myself to admit it. My family had turned their backs on me. Only my sister Maria was willing to speak to me. "You made your bed," my mother said coldly when I reached out for support. "Now lie in it." Mark was methodical in his approach. He had already hired a top divorce lawyer and started documenting everything for the upcoming custody battle, determined to minimize my time with the children. Reality crushed the impulses that had once excited me. Those stolen moments in Chicago now felt like the source of everything that was falling apart. The next few months were a brutal wake-up call. Mark was strategic. He began documenting my every move, gathering evidence to paint me as an unstable mother. Text messages, bank statements, social media activity. Nothing was off limits. I tried reaching out to Jack for support, but he completely ignored me. The passionate nights in Chicago now seemed like distant, almost embarrassing memories. Men like him were great at creating short-term excitement but never at facing the long-term consequences. The financial reality hit me hard. I had spent years indulging in online shopping, going on lavish vacations, and buying designer clothes without ever truly understanding our finances. Mark had always been the one managing the money while I lived in the comfort of suburban luxury. My first job interview was a disaster. The part-time marketing position wouldn't even cover the cost of childcare. The woman interviewing me, in her 40s, couldn't hide her judgment as she skimmed over my resume. 9 years as a stay-at-home mom had effectively erased my professional identity. Emma started having nightmares and would wake up crying, asking why Mommy and Daddy weren't in the same room anymore. Ethan, too, was becoming more withdrawn, his grades slipping. I knew I had destroyed our family, but I couldn't bring myself to admit it. Mark was calculating. He had already hired a top-tier divorce lawyer and was portraying himself as a stable, responsible parent. He was meticulously planning every move to reduce my time with the children. The worst part was that I was completely dependent on the man I had betrayed. Sitting in the courtroom felt like being on another planet, cold and lifeless. Mark, sitting across from me, looked as though he had been carved from stone. Our entire marriage was being dissected, every mistake, every moment of weakness laid bare for judgment by a stranger in a black robe. The mediator, a stern woman in her 50s, looked at me with a mix of disappointment and pity. I could read her thoughts. Another impulsive woman had thrown away a perfect marriage for a fleeting moment of excitement. Mark's lawyer presented the evidence like a prosecutor, bank statements showing my impulsive online shopping spree, screenshots of deleted text messages, hotel receipts from Chicago. Each document was another nail in my coffin. "Mrs. Harrison," the mediator said, "can you explain why you believe you should retain joint custody of the children?" I stumbled over my words. The truth was I had no convincing argument. My affair, my financial irresponsibility, and my lack of stability in my career all worked against me. Mark sat there completely composed while his lawyer had built a case portraying me as an unstable, unfaithful wife, possibly a threat to the children's mental health. And unfortunately, a lot of what they said was true. Only my sister Maria seemed to understand the complexity of my situation. Later, she told me it wasn't just about the affair. It was about feeling neglected for years, losing myself in the marriage. But understanding my emotions didn't change the consequences, and those consequences were about to hit hard. The final court hearing left me feeling empty. Mark stood there composed while I felt suffocated. The judge's words cut deep. Limited access, supervised visits, and the requirement to prove my ability through counseling and stable employment. I had lost almost everything. Our beautiful home would be sold, and Mark would retain primary custody of Ethan and Emma. I would only be allowed to see them every other week under supervised visits. I had destroyed the life I knew all with my own hands. Jake had long since vanished, gone and unsupported, just another chapter in my impulsive decisions. Those stolen hours in Chicago now felt like the most expensive mistake of my life. Mark took no pleasure in my misfortune. He didn't need to. His victory lay in the quiet, orderly way he had rebuilt our family life without me. He hired a full-time nanny, enrolled the kids in therapy, and created a stable environment that not only showed the court but also the children that he was a responsible parent. My first apartment was a small one-bedroom unit. Every other week, I would watch Ethan and Emma carefully, observing their words and actions. Their love, once so open, had now become cautious and reserved. This lesson wasn't just about the affair. It was about values, about trusting your family, and about making thoughtful, responsible choices. Mark didn't just win a divorce. He also won the respect of his children, teaching them the true meaning of responsibility. I lost everything for a fleeting thrill, while he gained everything by choosing stability.